All right, team, I'm going to kick us off with a karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura. He tio, he huka, he hou hu, ti hei mauri ora. Ko waitakere te maonga, ko manuko te moana, ko Bengaluru taku ukaipo, e nei nei, ka noho mātou, ko tuku whānau ki Tamaki Makaurau. Ko Chakravarti toku whānau, ko Pata toku papa, ko Sushila toku mama, ko Nischil toku ingoa, but you can call me Nish. Kia ora everybody, and welcome to this webinar about the importance of digital and entrepreneurial skills. We've got a wonderful panel here today with us. My name's Nish, I'm the Community and Engagement Manager. So for now, I'm going to end the slide, stop sharing, and I'm going to throw the rako over to our panelists. So Kane, I'm going to pass it over to you first.
O tēnā rā koutou, e nei rā hikurangi a waiapu a paraurangi e mihi kawatu ana kia koutou e whakarongo maina, mai tēnei pito o te tai rāwhiti e karanga atu nei kia koutou. Just sending greetings out from the sunny East Coast. Today it's sun shining here in Te Tai Rāwhiti, and we're in Gisborne here. Our kaupapa is Taiki. We describe ourselves as an impact house. So basically just a bunch of ordinary community people that work every day on some kind of social or environmental action, and using the principles of and frameworks of social entrepreneurship, of community development, of action research to make things happen. So our big catch cry is less hui, more doy. We're not about a million meetings. We're about putting our hands to work and being really experimental in transformative spaces. So we're not about the theory of transformation. We're about the praxis of transformation. And in regards to that, I guess some of our key, areas about building the entrepreneurial capability, particularly of our Māori people, but also creating opportunity in the digital opportunities. And I guess for, lots of key reasons, but one is to be able to bring our people home. They've all left for the cities, for Australia, for overseas because of work. How can we create good mahi back here at home to provide opportunities for our people to come home? We can talk a little bit more about some of the specific things, but that's the mahi that we're doing out here in Gizzy. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you, Kane. Pascal, I'll pass it over to you.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Nish, for having me. Ko Pascal Tukoingoa. I am based here in Toronga Moana, and it's not sunny today. The pop-up that I am currently working on with a small group of people here is called Stand Tall, and we created Stand Tall a couple of years ago as a place to create the conditions for our young people to create the future they want to see. And basically why we wanted to do this is same thing, put a focus onto action and actually equip young people to take action, whatever action it is that they want to do and take. We use an entrepreneurial framework in order to do that, and are working actively to move away the language of entrepreneurship away from just business, but more as a tool to get things done. Along the way, we are discovering a whole lot of things. So we work in schools and we work out of schools, and we also work in between with young people that are not really comfortable at school, but the schools would like them to be in there as well. So this is providing us a lot of opportunities to listen to what our young people want and need, and what is their understanding of entrepreneurship, and actually what do they do with it once they're tooled up. I look forward to more conversation. We do take a partnership approach, so we don't work on our own, and we really know that everybody's work is important, and we try hard to see where those entrepreneurial and digital capabilities can be plugged in existing communities or in existing groups like schools and their classrooms. Thank you.
Kia ora, Pascal. Thank you for that. Sabrina, over in Germany, I'll pass it over to you.
Kia ora koutou. No tia mana hau ko Sabrina Nageltukoinga. So I'm originally from Germany, where I'm based right at this moment, but usually I'm in Hawke's Bay. And I've got a real passion for entrepreneurship and education. I wear lots of different hats, but I guess have had experience working with people, or mainly it's sort of at the student kind of tertiary space, but increasingly have developed an interest for younger students. I've recently finished a master's thesis looking at how entrepreneurship has been embraced in New Zealand schools, and also talked to kids at primary schools and intermediate schools. So that's really where I can see a lot of potential going forward, is working with younger children. And interesting enough, just coming from a European-centric conference in Amsterdam, a lot of the problems that I guess people working with sort of young adults have is that they're trying to make them unlearn a lot of things that the education system has sort of beaten out of them, which is all about natural curiosity, being creative, being innovative. And so entrepreneurial, skills is right in that niche, but they're all sort of, trying to make them unlearn things. And I'm like, well, if we kind of focus on some of the younger students or kids or whatever, rangatahi, then maybe we don't have to learn some things later on. And in the meantime, we can actually strengthen their self-esteem and all of the other things, and, set them up for a better path, I guess. So yeah, that's probably a bit enough about me for now.
Kia ora, Sabrina. And I think everyone nodded the moment you said about unlearning. That was really cool to see. And last but not least, Sammy, I'll pass that arc over to you, mate.
Ka pai. Mihi ana ki a koe, ngā te kai karakia Nash, ngā whānau katoa. Ai mihi ana ki a koutou mo tō mahi rangatira I Wainganui ki ngā rangatahi. Hiki ngā wairua o ngā rangatahi me ngā huarahi pai I mihi ana. Ko Sammy Hughes tōku ingoa. Huri tēnei no te whakatohia, te whanapanui te aitanga māhaki hoki. Kia ora, Sammy Hughes. I'm coming in live and loud today from Te Wairua. We're just about to, after I finish this, I'll be going to do some mahi here. I am the CEO of Nona Te Ao. What is Nona Te Ao? Very similar to all our whānau that are on this call. We work in a space with rangatahi, but our particular area of interest is our whānau noho te kāinga, our ahika, our ukai, our whānau noho te ukai pō, our people who live at home. And about looking for pathways for them to enable them to be self-determining. I don't use the word equity very often these days, unless it's about equity of access, because to me, equity means to equate or to be equal to someone, and our people don't need to be equal. We want to be self-determining. And whether that looks equal or looks completely different is up to the individual in that instance. So yeah, we run large-scale pathway programs across multiple regions. We're a national trust based out of Te Tairawhiti, which we're extremely proud of. Te Pito o Te Ao Kane. And yeah, like all of you, we focus on enabling our whānau to be able to build lives that they're proud of, doing something that they love. And so whether that's what you'll consider the kind of traditional pathways into tertiary education, employment and training, or whether we're working alongside other organizations to enable them to grow their entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah, but that's enough from me. I'm interested in hearing these kōrero from everyone else. So kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, Sammy. Always a pleasure to have you on the chat, mate. So I'm actually going to kick off. So it's great to hear the kaupapa and the mahi that you guys are doing. So my first question then, and I'll throw this over to you, Sabrina, is so what are you seeing that's actually working well? So I know with your research, you work with schools and principals and leadership, particularly in the entrepreneurial skills space. So what are things that you are seeing and hearing are working well?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I guess generally speaking, I've seen it doesn't matter if it's like talking to really young rangatahi or whether it's somewhere at this sort of young adult age, that entrepreneurial skills and engaging with entrepreneurial educational activities really engages learners. And it's something that, we keep on talking, or we have been talking a lot over the past years about. We have this growing issues that, students don't find school interesting, they don't find learning interesting, they don't turn up. Now, past Corona or COVID, it's even worse that, our attendance rate is getting less. And we have to ask ourselves why that is. And it's because, we're not capturing the attention of these young people. And entrepreneurial skills and these activities that, some of the schools are already implementing across the country, they're really engaging. So, these kids, there was not, and I was, talking to various teachers and school leaders and the kids, and there was not one child that said they didn't enjoy it. There was not one child, and especially children who usually might have learning difficulties, or they're usually, not very academic, or, term problem children, especially those are just all over these activities. They feel the sense of belonging. They love having the agency. They excited because they can choose something that matters to them, and whether it's something that they see in the community, or whether it's, they just want to bake cookies. I don't know, but it's something because they have agency, and they they have choice, and they get the tools to kind of do something with these ideas that they naturally have. They just love it. And I think that's something that we should not underestimate. I don't think everyone should become an entrepreneur, or should run a startup, but I do think that this could be a vehicle where we can start to engage some of our learners again.
Thank you for that. And when you touch on that, it's about, I guess, and this is something that I know all of you guys do is expanding the horizons, getting them to understand and see what it could be, exploring their creativity, exploring their learning themselves. So, Kane, I'll pass it over to you. Same thing. What are you hearing and seeing? Because I know that this builds on a lot of the work that you guys do.
Yeah, kia ora. I think one of the things is that going through our rangatahi is a gateway into the wider whānau. So we see that as being more of a collective learning for the whole whānau. When you start with the kids, they tend to take that back, and you're creating problem solvers at a whānau level. So what we see in Te Tai Rāwhiti is at a whānau level, people wanting to look at entrepreneurship as a problem solving tool. And yeah, for our community, there's a lot of challenges here. So I think it's a good way to engage that, and for our kids to be the leaders in terms of using entrepreneurship as solutions for our region in particular.
Yeah, I think it's kind of often say it's helpful to think of entrepreneurship like we think of sports. We don't get our kids into sports thinking all of them will become professional athletes, because we put them in sports because they learn all those really good human skills of playing in a team, and having to kind of grind and learn, sort of how to, they're all really fundamental skills in terms of, just good life skills, good work skills, good problem solving skills, turning up on time, training, all of those different, the soft kind of parts. I think entrepreneurship is kind of the same, and where I think we perhaps go wrong is everybody equates it with we're wanting to get all these kind of kids straight into business, but it's actually what it is a helpful domain for, sort of really sharpening and growing a lot of those really good fundamental skills that people need, whether they go into business or just for life in general. And I think we should think of structuring the entrepreneurial journey in the same way we do sports. As when they're young, it's just about getting them into it. It's not so much about the technical, but just a lot of participation. It's built on a lot of voluntary, sort of community engagement. And then as different, it sharpens, and different ones show the different characteristics and wanting to go higher and higher, into different levels, as then you can have the academies, and you can kind of, get more and more specialized, and we grow that talent pool that way. I think if we thought about it a little bit more like that, people would think about the investment into this space in a slightly different kind of way. But I see heaps of benefit in terms of particularly, the earlier we start, the more impactful, the outcomes are over the longer term, for both at an individual whānau and wider community societal sort of level, I think, as well.
Thank you for that. And that's a great analogy of it being like a sport. And it's really interesting as well, because in the last sort of 8 to 10 years, a lot of sports around the world and in New Zealand, they've changed from a very structured approach to more play-based, because they see that actually, if it's structured, they're not learning skills like resilience, they're not learning things like teamwork, those fundamental skills that are transferable across lots of different areas. And kids aren't engaging in sport. And so they're moving towards play-based. And just like you said, give it a go. Sammy, same question. I know, again, it just builds on a lot of the work that you're doing with your rangatahi.
Yeah, I mean, we're extremely lucky. Like for a lot of, like in certain regions that we're in, there's already like partners that do that work. So we're lucky in Nōna Te Ao because we're based in Tairāwhiti and Taiki is in Tairāwhiti. So a whole bunch of our rangatahi already go through the Impact House. I was with about four of them from Harauta Wānanga last week, and they were telling me all about their businesses that they've started through the Impact House. So that was really awesome. So just a mihi to you, whānau, for the work that you're doing. Yeah, we take a similar approach to the work that we do, but a lot of it is partnered in different areas. Like where we sit, we don't try to pretend. I don't pretend like I'm the greatest entrepreneur and I like have an impact house like Taiki. We don't. But what we do in our mindset around entrepreneurial, being entrepreneurs, is the relationship between entrepreneurship and investment and whairawa or whakaarea. The concept of investment and growing that financial literacy space through entrepreneurialism. Yeah, so we're lucky in that aspect that we have great partners across our regions who are able to work in incubators with our whānau to be able to look at what that looks like. So one of the first things that we get our whānau to do when we do any work is we created a tool called the Vision Map. And it's probably the most simple thing in the world. We never ask any of our rangatahi, what do you want to do when you grow up? Or what are you going to do when you do that? Because to me, that seems like a really silly question, because every job I've had other than being a teacher, didn't know existed and probably didn't exist. So we ask our rangatahi to build a vision for what they want their life to look like. What do you want to have? What do you want to own? Where do you live? Do you live at home? Do you live down the road? And that opens them up to be able to begin that journey to understand that, okay, I want to own the Flash Hilux over there. And so, but I about the job the kind of thing that I'm looking for and telling me that I want to do is going to pay me $22.50 an hour. And I'm never going to be able to own my Hilux. And so that opens their mind up to then be able to be more malleable towards the kind of corridor that you have about their entrepreneurship. So it kind of touches on Sabrina's thing about having to help them unlearn a whole bunch of things that they're learning in the education system, to then open them up to then have a vision about the world and then support them through. So yeah, like in terms of what's going well for us, that's been working for our whānau. Our whānau have been going out into all sorts of different areas and taking on the world, that idea of Nōna Te Ao, knowing the world. But we're very lucky to have other whānau that are in our region that are doing similar things, particularly focusing like Kane, like Taiki, like Tōnui CoLab, who focuses on the tech entrepreneurship. So yeah, just a big shout out to all our whānau that are doing that work.
Kia ora, and thank you for that. And that again goes, so Pascal, this works like from a stand tall perspective, but you said you work with schools, you work with students outside of schools and those who fall in between. And that goes to what Sammy's saying. How do they know what exists? How do they know what possibilities are if they've never seen them or if they've never been exposed to them?
Kia ora. Coming back to what works before looking at these particular points. I think that we see that So the way we've structured Stanton, we have the opportunity, we deliver an entrepreneurial program with young people in years 12 and 13. They are in school, they are in curriculum, they are in class. We deliver programs with young people identified at risk of leaving school. That is 65% less attendance. Same age group, 15, 16, 17. We also deliver in community program with young people who have identified an interest in entrepreneurship. So that allows us to look at what works and what doesn't work. What we know works is that the minute our young people are out of school, they feel that they can open. And one of the threads of our conversation is to gear our work is understanding we've been tooled up with an entrepreneurial methodology of looking at problems, at thinking of problems, or even in a way of looking back at who they are, because this unlearning is real. This unlearning is real. What we notice, for instance, in working with young people from an attendance perspective, is that one of their biggest challenges is to work together. So at 16, they are used to working independently or being left independently. So the tools of entrepreneurship by working as a team and communicating into one another is actually unlocking some competencies that they haven't actually had a chance to try. So whatever that leaves them with is not exactly them creating a business, but it leaves them with an experience of something that they had not experienced before. So there's that discovery. So what really works for us is the opportunity to see and view our young people in front of their learning in and outside of school, because I think we need to separate the ability of young people to be engaged with school versus the ability of young people to be engaged with learning. And I think that school is a place where that happens, but the reality is what works well is when we can be in the wider community, engaging with people in the wider community, that really opens some doors for them that then they can open themselves. So what I'm thinking is that there's a role for this idea of connection to the wider community that is actually useful, and it delivers in different ways. One of the pieces of work that we're currently doing with University of Waikato is looking at why do people in our business community volunteer to mentor or judge entrepreneurial events. And what we're finding there is that the most of the time, they want to understand how young people's minds work. And that is their idea, because what they want to themselves is to get more youth ready. And so there's a whole lot of untapped little sparks of magic really opening for all involved. And if I'd like something to work better, and what I can see in talking with schools and the teachers in particular, is that the schools that have a lot more adversity to try to look for different ways will have personnel that is more entrepreneurial and is ready to actually push beyond what they have to do in order to create these new opportunities. And I would love to be able to help with that as well. When we're working with schools, how do we help identify, some staff who have actually an idea that they would like to, and help them get it out so that those young people that they're working with can actually experience something different that school might not be able to deliver itself.
Thank you. It's some really interesting points that you raised. And I think the one that sticks out for me is around how there isn't, or that you're finding that the youth that you work with are telling you that they are opening up outside of school, and they're more open to learning, particularly of these diverse skill sets. And I'd love to get this panel's thoughts on, well, how do we integrate that? How do we then create that learning environment for entrepreneurial skills within schools, can bring those networks in to schools and make it, do you get where I'm going? It seems like there's this
100%.
weird dichotomy. Sammy?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. Yeah, like one of the sad parts of the current educational climate is that you're probably not going to see that in where we're going, which is a much more rigid kind of construct of where we're looking at. But I 100% agree, Pascal. Like we want to know why our kids are not in school. Well, one, we're not exciting them. Two, we're not giving them the things that they're wanting to learn about. And three, we're probably not giving them some of the skills that they need to walk in the current world. Like you're currently watching a whole bunch of, the traditional pathways kind of get axed in regard to, it used to be a really safe career to be a public servant. Not currently. But like working in businesses, like when I was at school, get a commerce degree, go work for the Big Four. I didn't get a commerce degree, but I worked for the Big Four, and I know that that's probably not the kind of pathway. So how do we kind of grow that entrepreneurial mindset within schools? One, it starts with it being integrated in curriculum. That's probably one of the core aspects that, in order for something to really thrive within a school, it needs to be written into the policy that it's there. And having been a curriculum writer, I would say that it wasn't something that was touched upon, and therefore we have to have a whole bunch of different charities and a whole bunch of different people that are on these calls that are trying to work around the system to then give the system what it actually needs to be sustainable for our people. So what does it look like? In the long term, it looks like integration. It looks like it being part of well-rounded curriculum where entrepreneurial mindset is something that is not only fostered but encouraged to grow. And that kind of, you can see aspects of that in the inquiry process, but still there's a rigidness within that inquiry process that prevents it from taking it to that kind of next level where you're actually fully out there looking. In the kind of interim stages, it looks very in some ways similar to what we're doing now, but probably with a larger investment. And that's a good segue to you, Kane, because I know you're you'll be at the moment. There's a lack of investment into these spaces. To be able to grow these programs. We're really lucky at Non-RTL that we have a funding set that allows us to work with whole schools. So when we take on a group, we take on the whole school. And so when we're growing in regions, we're literally picking up that whole region. Others aren't as lucky in that aspect. So that's one way that you can integrate, is that you get a big funding block and then you integrate with the schools and you build the curriculum out locally, which is hard but doable. But yeah, in the current climate, what I would like to see is a larger investment into the space to allow for more access to levels of programming, and that comes in a long period of time. But also you have to kind of understand that schools are in an interesting space at the moment, where they're kind of fighting for their own mana motuhake around what that looks like with the new changes that are coming in. So then we're trying to ask them to introduce something totally different. And so sometimes you can be met with a level of adversity. So it's kind of, how do you manage those things? But yeah, a stronger level of investment into the space would go a long way to allow for curated and bespoke programs to be built locally at the initial stages, eventually leading towards a rewrite of rewriting it into the curriculum to then become a part of what we can see. And we can possibly look at that when the financial literacy gets written, and I'm hoping to push for that within that space.
Kia ora, Sammy. And I know that Sabrina, we've spoken about the integrated into curriculum piece a lot, and I know that this is part of the research that you've done. So do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sammy. Yeah, I guess it's interesting because I'm not sure whether actually educators or teachers at the moment are aware of that. In the current curriculum that we have, there is actually some reference to being enterprising under those foundational principles at the front end of the curriculum. But with the previous government having started the sort of rewrite of the curriculum, the current version that was put out as a draft for feedback had any reference to enterprise being taken out of that curriculum, which I found very concerning in a time when other countries around the world are investing heavily into entrepreneurial skills and mindsets, or countries in similar size to us like Scotland or Ireland, or in the European countries, completely aligning their I guess their curriculum with like wider country strategy. So they had like their whatever technology strategy, or their some business type country-wide strategy aligned with the curriculum, which I thought, it's such a no-brainer, but you're thinking it actually doesn't happen a lot, because you have all these government departments doing their own sort of thing, and trying to align that with like they're doing like 15 30-year plans, and we're doing like 3-year strategies, and it's just, I guess we're sometimes being so far away is such a blessing, in New Zealand, and now being in Europe at the moment for the past month or so, I see I still wouldn't want to live here. I love being in Aotearoa, but I think we just have to make sure that we don't lose what it means to show our rangatahi like opportunities, and us as a country thinking bigger and longer term, and not just such short-term things. And so, yeah, I do agree. It's definitely concerning that there's things in curriculum happening that, basically means we're going backwards, and, integration to curriculum is one thing. But I guess another thing that I'm thinking of is, as humans, we learn a lot from role models, and our role models in schools. And I know, Pascal, you're right, learning doesn't just happen in schools, but, also a lot of the role models outside of whānau is in schools. So if these role models, meaning the teachers and educators, if they are more aware of the power of entrepreneurial skills and what it actually means to role model some of those behaviors and that mindset, what difference that can make to our rangatahi. And I think that's sort of, some additional professional development, some resources into making sure that teachers understand the value of it, and so they can actually start role modeling. And then there will be an intrinsic motivation for them to bring in, people like us who can actually, we're not trying to take anything away from anyone. We're not trying to tell them how to, how to do their job, but it's about augmenting what's already working, but also adding things that are, or I guess not fixing, but, also addressing issues with some of our skill sets that we bring with our diverse perspective. So yeah, that could be a point of difference, or something we can focus on, is how can we do like professional development slightly differently, and having some more resources going into that.
Yeah, thank you, Sabrina. One of the things you just touched on is around role modeling. And I'd love to hear from Kane and Renee around this as well, because you must be seeing the rangatahi that are going, that you guys are working alongside, being able to role model that behavior of being creative and exercising the entrepreneurial skills that they're picking up through the work that you guys are doing with them. And that must be amazing for their younger generations to be able to see and aspire to almost.
Yeah, I think, again, touching on some of the stuff that works is, I guess we lean into the space of entrepreneurship through our Indigenous, sort of wisdom. And so we see entrepreneurship as a platform for the expression of aroha. It's kind of, how do you bring, your aroha to the world, and use those different kind of entrepreneurial frameworks and tools, as the way that you go about doing that, and so probably, that's the way, the framework in which we engage rangatahi kind of within that. So it's, yes, I guess in a way they are the kaupapa, but they're not the kaupapa. The rangatahi aren't the kaupapa. The kaupapa is all of us, and it's our pakeke, it's our mātua, it's our tamariki, it's our unborn mukupuna. You know, that's the kaupapa, and so we're all part of working and learning and growing, and you know, all those different kind of ways in order to serve that purpose. So I think tuakana teina models work really well, but you know, I think what works is deeper experiential learning models, rather than doing, you know, a one-off event for, you know, sort of 500 kids. You know, it's actually about how do you take cohorts of kids on a 2 or 3 year deeper learning, you know, kind of journey, where, you know, it's they get to learn first as a tainer, and then they get to teach as a tuakana, you know, and that really kind of, it's the cycles of practicing and then teaching those skills that actually kind of embed, you know, and sharpen those things as they kind of prepare. So, but that's not what government, you know, and investment crowds want. They want the big, you know, kind of, they want big numbers. They want kind of show-stopping kind of stuff, and that becomes, you know, to Sabrina's point, I think we take a really short-term view often as we're thinking about these kinds of spaces, about what's some quick fire, you know, kind of things, whereas we should be thinking about what's a generational plan, you know, from young ones right through to, you know, to older ones, that we can be thinking about. You know, how do we grow these capabilities, these competencies, and how do we make sure that this doesn't become another siloed sector? Because entrepreneurship, and where I think the transformative part of it is, and why I'm an advocate more for community-led, you know, sort of responses rather than an educational kind of sector response to this sort of spaces, because I think it's every sector, you know, and it's about how do we create the networks across communities to kind of design and deliver, you know, really holistic programs, because this is all about mindsets, about some of those core competencies, you know, and about how we build those skills over the longer term. So I think schools are really busy places. I think it's been difficult to try and bring this into school environments. You've often got to find a champion, you know, within the school that sees this as an important kaupapa and trying to work with them. But otherwise, I think and I think also just our schools, you know, and our teachers carry I think they're carrying a lot of burden of a lot of things. We're expecting a lot of them. And then you go and talk to industry people, and they're saying a lot of our young people are ill prepared, you know, for the world of work. And so there's big mismatches all over the place. It's got to be a broader community response. You know, lots of people, everybody's got to be a teacher. You know, everybody, or the entrepreneurs all need to create space in their lives to be teachers, and to be the role models, and to, you know, be connecting with the next generations. That's going to be a critical piece of getting, you know, this stuff right.
Yeah, I think when you ask rangatahi, majority of them would say that their first role models are within their whānau. And that's because they've got relationships with them and they know them at a personal level. So to Kane's point, I think it's about providing connections. The investment should be providing connections for the schools to be able to reconnect to the community. What we've also found is that our community, like our adults, because of the siloing, don't know how to engage with rangatahi. And they do tend to lean on the schools, or, you know, kind of distance themselves, and there's not really too much opportunities for that intergenerational kind of connection to build relationships with our youth. I think you kind of need to start there and invest in opportunities and time for our people to connect with each other at a personal level. So yeah, I think, yeah, to Kane's point, the schools already carry a lot. It's about how do you free up time for them to also connect with community, so they've got support, as well as our rangatahi and our youth.
Yeah, thank you, Kane and Renee. It's really funny. You talk about one thing you mentioned there, Kane, was about the mismatch of skills between employers and what they're seeing the youth coming out of school. And you reminded me of, so we had so our good friend Russell Dunn, who's one of the EPs at Taimaki College. He said if I had a penny for every time I spoke to an employer and they said, what are they teaching these kids in school because they're just not, ready for work? He said, I would be on a beach sipping margaritas right now. It's just really interesting that it does keep coming up, this thought or this vein of it, is the current education system the way it is does it reflect what is actually needed in the current job market, or even does it reflect the needs of the rangatahi? Does it reflect their interests? Does it support creativity? Does it support that wider learning? So it's really interesting.
I won't jump down that rabbit hole because that's a whole nother webinar.
Yeah,
but what I will say is both sides aren't wrong. The kids are turning up ill prepared. There's a lot of things that used to be taught not in school. They're actually in the homes, and it was kind of parents would teach you, or your older cousins would teach you, or and as our families have become more nuclear and more siloed and more fragmented, a lot of those sort of general skills, what people used to call common sense, that's not turning up, kind of anymore. And so there's mismatches there. Also, the workplaces have a heap of work to do on this sort of youth ready spaces. They need more training and support in terms of how to hold space for our young people, because they do turn up different, is even the language kind of stuff, the way that we talk, is all of that needs kind of work as well. So there's lots of things, but I think key to it is that we take a really long-term generational approach to how we're kind of thinking about this sort of stuff, and it needs to be the connection of the public sector, the private, and the community. That triangle piece needs to be, the way that we're thinking about the whole system.
Kia ora, Kane. And Pascal?
Oh, sorry, Pascal. I was going to jump into that very quickly if I can.
Yeah.
I love that thought, Kane. And something that occurred to me earlier today when I had a conversation is that often I've asked myself, we kind of all, a lot of us agree that there's things broken and the education system is not serving our rangatahi well, and why haven't we changed? This was sort of set up because of the industrialization. We're like, how many hundreds of years after this now, and we're still having the same education system. But today it occurred to me that we are probably the first generation that is not heavily affected by like a world war or like a lengthy period of trauma where a whole generation basically was probably busy with dealing with all sorts of other things. And maybe this is our generation's time to make that change, because we if we're waiting for someone else to make that change and say, okay, yeah, we need to, this education system is broken, but it's a big, bigger than Ben Hur goal to try to reimagine it with all these parties all these parties that you just mentioned, Kane, like co-created. That's a big task. Everyone is kind of trying to maybe fob it off to someone else and trying for someone else to take that task on, but maybe it's actually our time to do that, because maybe that's what we owe our our ancestors, but also the people coming after us, that we take that responsibility and start, okay, we're going to have to do something, and we're going to have to do it together, and we have to take this generational view. We can't wait any longer. And I always refer back to this video, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's like a group of people sitting on the grass, and then one guy gets up and like crazy dances around, and everyone looks at him going, oh my gosh, he's crazy, and then he stands there and awkward moment, and then after a few minutes someone joins in, and then two people are dancing like crazy people, and before you know it, fast forward the video like 5 minutes, and the whole grass everyone has gotten up off the grass and danced, and one or two people are sitting. And I guess it takes a lot of courage to start something like that, but maybe these people watching the videos, watching the webinar, all of us, maybe we can actually come together, and we can be those crazy people dancing, and hopefully get others on board, and then we're all dancing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we can definitely be crazy people. Pascal, I'm going to throw it over to you because this transitions nicely to the sort of the last part of this. So what would you like to see based on what you're seeing, learning and hearing and from your communities? What would you like to see implemented to create or be the catalyst for that change, for that long-term change that we're now talking about?
There's many things. So where do we start? Like, what is the one thing? What level of the system do we want to influence and change? So I need to focus on one piece where Stanton has started. It is, how do we make change happen from looking at current relationships and trying to work so that other relationships, other types of relationship can emerge. A lot of what has been said by everybody today is, to me, pointing to this. How do we work together by placing a young person at the center of their life journey from their own perspective? And there's the potential from entrepreneurial methodologies, and communities can support to this. We talked about integrating into school. I think the beauty of entrepreneurialism is that it is everywhere. So to me, to lock it into a curriculum is effectively a way of controlling it. And I'm not saying that school by themselves would need to look at this thing. And it's almost for all of us, I believe, if we love it, set it free. What are the frames and the relationships we need to create so that actually it can be shaped by the people it's going to benefit the most, ongoing for the long term, is our young people. So that's like super aspirational. What I would like to see implemented right now is that, can we have conversations across the walls of the various systems? Our schools keep looking at the problem solving within the schools. In the community element, we often look at us, we are all talking together right now, we are all looking at different ways. Where does one start and finish? Where does one start and take on the next step? How do we complement one another? How do we complement an approach so that our employers can actually participate earlier and longer? Not just at a job fair or careers thing, once and over likely event. How do we sustain engagement for all in doing things differently? This is really what I can see where entrepreneurial methods work, because it's not just, entrepreneurialism is not sparking innovation, sparking creativity. It's actually building from there. It's actually doing something from there. And this is where change happens. It's in the long term of actually getting involved with something. And so to me, at a community level, I would like us to do less of these 1 hour, 1 day, one talk type things, but actually take those resources and work together to actually create meaningful, lengthy experiences where we can all look at outcomes together and see what can be done. The last thing that I would like to see implemented is that we start preparing already the young people to be these passers of knowledge, those community builders, because the roles that are really needed for this is not a teacher role, it's not a youth worker's role, it's not a psychologist's role, it's not even an educator role. There's new roles coming along. So let their young people shape what that looks like. So that would be really my goal.
Kia ora. Thank you, Pascal. And I love that. And I think one of the things that resonates with me is around, from what you said, is around relationships. It's not working in silos, working together in a cohesive, holistic approach. And Sammy, I'm going to throw it over to you, because I know that from Nona Te Ao, that's a huge part of what you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the model of the work that we do. Nona Te Ao would be like considered an umbrella organization rather than like an organization that actually does a lot of things. So yeah, we take on larger, like because of the type of model that we have, where we have the ability to take on large sums of funding. But to deliver that work, you need partners to deliver. And so one of the processes that we go through is like we sit with our iwi, and we align to their 100-year plan. And then when we start to implement our parts of the program we look at other community programs that are going on, and then we uplift those programs to become sustainable. Because yeah, what we've all talked about is that, 1 hour or that kind of one-off kind of corridor, that's not going to shift people. It's about building consistency, because a lot of our whānau, they're not getting consistency, particularly if you live in a rural region, but even some of our schools in like urban areas, you might get one person come talk to you one day and then you never see them again. It's about that level of consistency. But what can we do together, like the people that are on this call, those of us that are speaking here, what can we do? Well, the great part about this corridor is it's run by EPIT, like Education Partnerships and Innovations Trust. Whole concept when they were building was around building cohesion between the different people that are doing work, and then helping us come together to collaborate. So that's a great start. I know that, like, now I've already got an email in my inbox from Kane about bringing the people in the Tairāwhiti together, to look at what that looks like cohesively, putting together a project for our region. But if we take that further and we think of, okay, EPIT has this amazing platform, and we do meet every now and then, why can't we, rejig some of what we're thinking about doing in some of those hui, instead of us coming to share all the great things that we're doing and have an uplifting party of the great things that we do, and we make that meaningful, and we come and we spend that time alongside some of the people that are on this call, some of those partners, and we actually start to think about what that looks like moving forward. And we're looking at the current landscape of funding for those that are out there that do that. Like, I specialize in procurement. That's like my specialty. Is that, there's no longer the $10,000, $20,000 grants that are going to come out. So those kind of 1 to 2 day things are just going to kind of get wiped off the map due to that fact. But that means that there's a whole bunch of community organizations that are out there that we already know that are going to suffer. And so how do we come together as people that look after larger organizations that are doing this much larger scale, wider mahi, to be able to ensure that, we're working towards this one, like a kaupapa that we're all working towards, that helps us to become cohesive, that we're working towards this shared kind of aspiration. What are we doing in our own kind of pockets? And then what are we doing to support those in our communities to enable to uplift them as well, so that we're having that large scale cohesion across. Because I think that if we're not thinking about it, if we're talking about it, but we're not actively doing it, then we're becoming part of the problem. And I know I'm probably part of it, because I do that all the time. So yeah, that's my kind of tono for myself, and for us, and for EPIT, I guess. We have the platform, we have the people. Why don't we just come together, and why don't we do it? Yeah.
Kia ora, Sammy, and thanks for the shout out. And again, what you said on relationships, connections, that's what it is, right? Kane and Renee, we'll throw it over to you, and then we'll wrap up the session.
Sweet. Yeah, I just wanted to build off it, because I know there'll be a bunch of people listening. I was reading through the budget yesterday, going line by line, and having a good look. The one area where I think there's opportunity is to look at this entrepreneurial, digital, financial literacy education kind of piece in terms of social investment. So as a transformative tool, that could be looked at in more of a social investment kind of pathway. That's going to require our sector, both community, education kind of sectors, is coming together with quite a clear and cohesive voice to put a plan on the table. I think we could legitimately be asking for $150 million 3-year type of investment, that particularly could bring together community partners with education providers, perhaps some of the philanthropic partners, some of the corporate sector partners, to kind of look at some of these pathways. But that to me is kind of, at the back end of these kind of corridor. The corridor is good, but we need to be putting up a cohesive plan for how do we actually bring, a lot of these moving parts together, because we're not going into a period where there's a lot of resources kind of lying around. we need to elevate what we're talking about from being quite a sector-based thing to actually something that's longer term and goes across multiple different, kind of areas. And I think social investment to me is one area that we could be kind of looking into as a potential, sort of pathway. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of finish and leave that as a bit of thinking.
All right, team. So thank you so much. There definitely wasn't enough time to cover everything. But unfortunately, that is all the time we've got today. So a link to this recording will be shared out to everyone who's registered. So feel free to share it around. Any questions that have been posted in the chat, we'll present to the panelists. And when I send that link around with the recording, I'll have the responses to share with you guys as well. Our event series will continue. So the next one we're organizing is a human-centered design workshop run by the amazing Jade Tang Taylor. And that's going to be on the 19th of June online. That's just one of many of our upcoming events. And so you can feel free to check out our events calendar on the website. We've got a whole bunch that we've got up on there that are coming up. First, so thanks to our panelists today. So Sammy, Pascal, Kane, Renee, and Sabrina. Thank you so much for making the time to be here for this important kōrero and for sharing your wisdom, experience, and knowledge with the group. I'd also like to thank our participants, so everyone who registered and everyone who was able to make it today. Thank you so much for coming along. I'm going to close this off with a closing karakia. Kia tau te manaakitanga, ki runga ki tēnā o tātou. Kia piki te ora, kia piki te māramatanga, kia hoki pai atu, kia hoki pai mai. Tūturu whakamaua, kia tina, tina. Haumi e, hui e, taiki e. Thank you, everybody.